You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Today is Tuesday, July 27th, 2021, and this is your daily Star Trek news from the Roddenberry Podcast Network. On today's show, LeVar Burton shares his thoughts on hosting Jeopardy. Robert Duncan McNeill reveals that he was asked to be in Star Trek Picard Season 1. Tooning Out the News gives us the new fake Star Trek shows. And I've got this week's Trek Trivia. I'm Alison Pitt, and today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month of counseling at betterhelp.com/DSTN. He's jumped out of airplanes and walked over hot coals. But Star Trek The Next Generation's Geordi LaForge, LeVar Burton, found hosting Jeopardy a real challenge and really scary. Yes, this is the week that Burton is taking his turn guest hosting the iconic game show and vying to become only the third host of the show since it began in 1964, following Art Fleming and, of course, Alex Trebek. Trebek hosted Jeopardy for the better part of 4 decades, from 1984 until shortly before his death last year. As part of the guest hosting gig, Jeopardy will also match this week's winnings to benefit Burton's chosen charity, Reading is Fundamental. Burton spoke with the Associated Press last week after pre-recording his episodes. He let the producers know of his interest in hosting, but his candidacy was also supported by a petition drive, which has garnered more than 250,000 signatures to date. Burton said he had 1 day of rehearsal, then the next day he filmed 5 back-to-back episodes. His wife, Stephanie Cozart Burton, was there to do his makeup and ended up coaching him after the first episode didn't turn out to their liking. He told himself, "You're not going to be as smooth as Alex, let go of that. But what you can bring to the table is you." So that became my point of focus, and when it did, I started having fun. Burton sees the show as an opportunity to bring something educational as well as entertaining like his other work. And he said that for the next host to be a person of color would be yet another first that would say something about us and be an opportunity to continue the conversations around whiteness as the normative default. To read Burton's full interview, head over to apnews.com. And to find out how to watch Jeopardy this week, which you should be doing, visit jeopardy.com/watch. This past weekend saw the release of the Star Trek Lower Decks second season trailer revealing the upcoming return of Robert Duncan McNeill's Voyager character, Lieutenant Tom Paris, albeit on a collectible commemorative plate. According to McNeill, Star Trek fans may be seeing even more of his beloved character, potentially on Star Trek Picard. In the latest episode of Trek FM's Primitive Culture podcast, McNeill discussed his time in the Star Trek Directors School on the set of Voyager. While filming the series, he learned the craft, eventually directing 8 episodes of Star Trek, evenly split between Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise. Tucked in that conversation, McNeill revealed that he's been in discussion not only about directing Star Trek Picard, but also possibly appearing in the series as his character, Tom Paris. McNeill told Trek FM, "I did talk to showrunner Terry Matalas about Picard Season 2. Terry had talked about bringing me over there as a director or as an actor, bringing Tom Paris, but it's really been about schedule." He went on to say, "I'd love to do Picard. I actually loved that first season." In fact, McNeill nearly appeared in the first season, but again, his schedule got in the way. "It wasn't a big sequence of scenes or whatever," McNeill said. "It was a couple of scenes with Patrick Stewart. I think it was just view screen stuff, or maybe in his office or something. It wasn't a lot, but they were trying to work it out, so the schedule might work, but it didn't pan out." Now, it's no surprise that it's difficult to get McNeill into the studio to work on Star Trek. The actor turned director even had to turn down directing for Star Trek Discovery due to his busy schedule. Most recently, he's been directing the sci-fi series Resident Alien, along with directing and producing Disney's new Turner and Hooch series. To listen to McNeill's full conversation with Primitive Culture, visit trek.fm, or you can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. I've got more news and Trek Trivia Tuesday in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online counseling service that matches you with a licensed professional therapist, someone who you can connect to in a way that suits you. Here's how it works. When you sign up for BetterHelp, you'll fill out a questionnaire that helps them match you with someone who specializes in providing the care that you need. So, for instance, depression and anxiety, relationships and anger issues are just some of the things that they can help you with. And of course, anything you share with your counselor is confidential. And it's convenient too. When I joined BetterHelp, I joined on the web, but I downloaded their app too, so I can message my counselor whenever it works for me. I want you to start living a happier life today. And as a daily Star Trek news listener, you can get 10% off your first month of counseling by visiting betterhelp.com/DSTN. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DSTN. As part of their Comic-Con at Home coverage from last weekend, Paramount Plus put out a special promotional video yesterday with the hosts of the animated news show Tooning Out the News, commentating on all the best bits, of the virtual convention. Along with some Marvel Universe snark and a review of at-home cosplay, the hosts showed off a list of new Star Trek titles supposedly coming to the Star Trek universe in a funny take on the current avalanche of content making its way to Viacom CBS's premier streaming service. Get ready for Star Trek, The Final Flapjack, Star Trek Wacky Forehead Squad, Star Trek The Search for New IP, Star Trek The Last Contact with William Shatner, Star Trek Space, Gig Econo Ship, Starfleet Cuts Benefits, and Trek of Easttown, The Wrath of Wawa. Straight for Comic-Con 2021, what Tooning Out the News calls the socially acceptable way to have a spandex fetish. All of these titles are not coming to your screen very soon. Now, as a final jab at the expense of the rapidly expanding Star Trek universe, correspondent Tori Hughes noted, pundits say the key to winning the new presidential election is gaining support from the all-important demographic of actors who have been in a Star Trek show. That one actually hits pretty close to the mark, given that Trek stars are pretty well known these days for weighing in on political campaigns. To watch the full Tooning Out the News coverage, head to Paramount Plus's YouTube channel. It's less than 4 minutes long, so you have no excuse. And be sure to go and check out the whole Tooning Out the News series exclusively on Paramount Plus. Right, finally, it's Trek Trivia Tuesday. Did you know that before there was a United Federation of Planets, there was a coalition of planets? This precursor to the UFP was created as a reaction to Romulan attempts to destabilize the region of space between the Alpha and Beta quadrants. The coalition was a joint effort between humans, Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites, and it began with a conference in San Francisco on Earth. It wasn't completely smooth sailing and was interrupted by terrorist group Terra Prime, a humans' first organization which threatened to destroy Starfleet Command unless every non-human left the Sol system within a day. So now a trivia question for you. Terra Prime was ultimately thwarted, and though they may have been one of the biggest threats at the time to the Federation's future, they weren't the only headache that had to be contended with. The Tellarites, for instance, proposed a trade embargo. Who did they want to prohibit trade with? Who rejected the proposal, and why? Find out on Friday's episode of Daily Star Trek News. Well, that's it for today's Daily Star Trek News from the Roddenberry Podcast Network. Don't forget to check out the other great shows on the network at podcasts.roddenberry.com. Daily Star Trek News is produced by me, Alison Pitt, and written by Chris Peterson, Jack Brown, and David Powell, with trivia by T. Rick Jones. Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month of counseling at betterhelp.com/DSTN. I'm back tomorrow with more of the Star Trek news you need to know, and this week in Trek history. I'm Alison Pitt. Live long and prosper.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.